everyone, it's Max, and today I am here with the top books of 2021. It's been a minute. I kind of took all of December off. I had a really rough start to the month, and then I had a play, and then I was house sitting, and then all this stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take a break. I know it's the month that like no one takes breaks. They're usually putting out a lot of content, but I just needed a break. So I took it, and you know what? That's okay. But I also took a huge break from reading. I did not read many books in December. I got kind of a little bit of my mojo back at the end, but these books you've all seen before. You didn't miss anything in December. The one big, like, sad one, I guess, was the Book of Everything, or the Absolute book. I had really hoped, I was staving off filming this in the hopes that that would be put on there, and it was not. I DNF'd it, which was so sad, but here we go. Now this is my top 10 books of the month or the year, starting with the 10th and then working my way up to the 1st. I do not have as many like physical books as I had hoped. I either can't find one, I left one at the other house, or I had ARCs of them, which is honestly awesome, and I'm so happy that I was able to get ARCs of books I ended up loving, but I just don't own them. But the 10th book that I'm going to talk about is A Thousand Ships by Natalie Haynes. This is a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of the women affected by the war. I enjoyed it so much. I am so excited to read more by her, and I just thought she did a great job. The one issue that I did have with this was the non-linear way of storytelling. I don't think it added anything to the plot or the book. It jumped around so much that it was a little hard to keep up with like when like these events were taking place and what was happening, and I wish it was definitely told a little bit more linearly, but I did end up really loving it, and I thought it was a great retelling of the Trojan War and everything that happened around that from the perspective of women who maybe haven't had a voice before. The 9th book is, I don't know if it's a surprise. It was a surprise for me, especially based on the rest of his books, and that is Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. Now, you are going to see this author in the opposite video of my worst books of the year, but Best Served Cold did make it onto my top 10 because I actually really enjoyed this. This follows a girl named Sansa, where she was the captain of the sellswords that were hired by a duke to help win this war. But she becomes so beloved that the duke feels threatened, and he ends up like trying to kill her. Her brother is dead, but she gets away and she swears revenge. And so she teams up with a bunch of different people and they get revenge. And it was so good. What a great revenge tale. I love a good revenge tale. I'm a big fan, and I think this was done so well. I loved Monza. I loved all of the characters. I felt for them. I was excited. I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. The rest of the trilogy and the rest of his books were a serious letdown, but this one was it. My 8th favorite book of the year, it was an ARC, and that was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. What a great book. This is about a man who wakes up on a spaceship light years away from Earth and doesn't remember why. But he starts remembering his past, and we get the storyline of his memories, and it turns out that the galaxy and the sun is dying, and they find out it is because of an alien life form that is sucking the energy from the sun, and it is happening to all of the nearby universes except one. And so he is traveling to get to that sun to figure out what is going on. His 2 crewmates are dead, and when he gets there, he finds an unexpected ally. It was so good. I loved this. I loved this book. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was such a great follow-up to The Martian, especially after I didn't really like Artemis when I read it. It was phenomenal. What a great book. Andy Weir does sci-fi like no one else I have ever read. I think it's amazing. He does such a great job, and Project Hail Mary is a must read. Okay, the angle changed, and it is going to change again because I just found the actual physical copy of the book I'm going to talk about next, and I've already actually filmed what I wanted to say about it, but here we are. And so in 7th place, we have Unnatural Magic by C.M. Waggoner. This follows two perspectives. One is of a girl who is a very powerful magician, but she lives in a country where women aren't allowed to be magicians, so she travels to a nearby country and she becomes the apprentice of the head mage, which is like the second most important position in the entire country after the king. And so that is a great storyline. And then we follow a soldier who deserts his post and he's injured, and he stumbles upon a troll who helps nurse him back to health. And then these storylines intermingle when they all come to a city where trolls are being murdered and they have to figure out who did it. It was so surprising. It was so great. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. I think it was such a great story, and the writing was phenomenal, and I just highly suggest it. I haven't seen anyone talk about this book, and people need to read it. It was so great. Don't read the sequel, and it's not even a sequel. It's more like just the second book that she's written, and it happens to take place in the same world, and it is one of the characters' children, but it was not very good, and you do not need to read that. This has its own story, and it wraps up at the end and everything. So good. My 6th favorite book of the year was Wings of Shadow by Nikki Powell-Preto. I really enjoyed this. I'm so happy that this trilogy ended on such a bang. It was phenomenal. I love this whole trilogy. I love the sister dynamic. I thought that the ending really did it justice and did the story justice. This is about a girl named Veronica, who has a sister named Val, but they are both trying to become Phoenix Riders, which is illegal. And when they find a Phoenix egg that connects with Veronica, Val does something horrendous, which makes Veronica leave. And Veronica decides to disguise herself as a boy to get into the Phoenix Rider Academy. Not even academy, like rebellion, and stuff happens from there. I can't do synopses at all, but this trilogy is so good. This was the last book in the trilogy, and each book was just so phenomenal. I had such a great time reading each one, and I'm a little sad it's over, but it was so great, and I cannot wait to read more by Nikki Powell-Preto. The 5th book or series I have to talk about is the October Days series by Seanan McGuire. These books, on a whole, I have loved. I love Toby, I love Tybalt, I love all of the supporting characters. Some books have been a little bit of a miss for me, but on the whole, I've really enjoyed each and every one, and I can't wait to continue the series. I think for the most part, they have gotten better and better, and I am just so excited to see what happens next. This is a series about a half-fae named October Day, who one day is turned into a fish for 14 years. But the real story starts up after she turns back into a human. She becomes a private investigator, but quickly becomes ensconced back into the Fae world after one of her only Fae friends is found murdered, and tasks October with finding out who killed her. Great series. The intricacies and the politics and the world it's crazy, and I can't believe Seanan McGuire is able to keep it all together. I kind of wish there was a little bit more world building, in that I'm a little confused about some of the rules and stuff, but overall I have been loving this series. I am still reading it, and books are still coming out, and so I have a feeling I will be with this series for a very long time. My 4th favorite book of the year was not really a surprise, but I was surprised by just how much I loved it, and that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I finally read it this year. I read it in like January and loved it. I cried, I was happy, I was sad, I was excited. I really enjoyed this. This is about a girl named Addie LaRue who back in the 1700s, 1600s, made a deal with basically the devil to get her out of a marriage, and she said she wanted to be free. Well, freedom to the devil means no one remembers her. So anytime she leaves a room or she is out of sight of someone, they forget her. So she's been living this way for hundreds of years until she finally meets someone who remembers her. Phenomenal. It was so good. V.E. Schwab does not usually do it for me. Her books a lot of the times really miss the mark, where I like the idea a lot, but the execution is not it for me, and it's usually her writing style that I just don't mesh with. I think it's a little too simple, where it's like she's got all these awesome, great ideas, but she just breaks it down till it is so simple that you're just kind of like, okay. But this was not that, and it took her a long time to write, and it was a passion project of hers, and you can tell. If she kept writing like this, I would love it. And I think V.E. Schwab would really do it for me more. And I just hope she does, because this was phenomenal. All right, my angle changed, and that's because I found one of the books, Unnatural Magic, that I wanted to talk about in the stack of books that my camera is resting on. And I found it after I filmed the clip that I had for it, and so the angle is flip-flopping, so I'm sorry. But my third favorite book of the year was Iron Widow, and I cannot remember who it's by, but this was phenomenal. And this is kind of a sci-fi story that takes place far in the future, where there are these creatures that humans are fighting, and men who have this like psychic ability are able to fight, and there are women that are called Iron Maidens, I think, that fight with them by lending them their strength through psyche, like through their psyche, and I think they call it psi, but most of the time it kills women, and they are like, that's just society. But when our main character's older sister is actively murdered by one of them, our main character swears revenge and becomes an Iron Maiden herself. But when she kills the guy who killed her sister through like their psi, she is given to the most powerful of these men who are killing these creatures, but he is a convicted murderer. And this was phenomenal. There's a polyamorous relationship with so much communication and respect, and I love our main characters. I love the plot. Our main character, you know, a lot of books really annoy me because it's like, there's just like, I won't cross that line. And it's like, girl, like life, like, yeah, it's a line, but sometimes you gotta to be able to have a better world and like a better, like to make the life easier for our character. And it's like, these people will only be like used against you, and they weren't even good people, but a lot of people, I feel like characters in a lot of books are like, oh, but they're my blood, loyalty. Our main character was like, nope, they will be used against me. And it crossed the lines that I always want crossed. I'm always like, just cross those lines, because like, it just, and it did, and it was so good. Oh, I loved this book. I got it as an ARC, and it just blew me away. I adored it. I can't believe it's considered young adult. It really isn't. It's definitely more new adult, but please read it. It's so good. It's got great representation, and I cannot wait for the sequel. It was so good. And then my second favorite book of the year, I am so angry with myself because it is at my other house, and I literally grabbed Wings of Shadow and Best Served Cold from that other house and just forgot my second favorite, and that was Lore by Alexandra Bracken. The first book I finished this year. Or last year, I guess, since I'm filming this in 2022. I loved it. I can't believe... I honestly cannot believe I enjoyed it so much. Alexandra Bracken, you know, her Darkest Minds series was written at the perfect time because of dystopia, but nowadays it's like a very overdone plot. I really liked Passenger and Wayfarer by her. A lot of people didn't, which I don't know why, but this one really did it for me. And this takes place in modern day New York, where the Greek gods are still real, but I think it was 7 of them pissed off Zeus, and in retribution, he has made it where 1 week every 7 years the gods are mortal, and humans are able to kill them. If a human kills a god, they become that god for at least 7 years until the next time they are mortal. Now, if they keep surviving, great, but they are able to be killed, and then that person can become that god. There are 3 left of the originals, including Athena, who teams up with our main character to try and get revenge against the fake Ares, who killed our main character's entire family. It was so good. I like just really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a great premise. It's a standalone and it was so good. I just really liked it. I was so surprised by how much I enjoyed this. I got it as an ARC and I just loved it. So good. Just go pick it up. Just go pick it up. All right, and then my favorite book of the year was such a surprise to me, I'm going to be honest. I have read most of this author's work, but they have never hit this hard. Kind of similar to Alexandra Bracken and V.E. Schwab, where it's like I've read these authors before, but they have never blown me out of the water. But something about this year, and that is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. I have read almost everything by Jay Kristoff. And yes, Illuminate was phenomenal, and that whole trilogy is great, but anything solely by him has always slightly missed the mark. That includes the Nevernight trilogy and the Lifelike trilogy, and like I DNF'd his Griffin like steampunk trilogy, but they never really done it for me. Godsgrave has been the closest to doing it, but it just hasn't done it the way that Empire of the Vampire did it. This takes place in a post-apocalyptic world that kind of, it's basically seems like ancient France, kind of like during the time of like the Crusades, where the sun is super weak and dying, and vampires have started to thrive. And our main character, Gabriel, is part of a rare sect of humans that have a reason why they are able to hold their own against vampires, and they are vampire hunters. I won't say the reason, because I don't think it's described, and I don't think you should know going in, but it takes place in kind of 3 separate storylines. There's one where Gabriel is young and he's just starting off as a novice. One is kind of when he's like middle-aged and he is broken off of this church and you're trying to find out why, and he's also helping to try and find the Holy Grail, which some people think is the key to killing the vampires. And then the last point of view is in the future, or kind of present day, I guess. He has been kidnapped by the vampires and he is held hostage and he is being forced to tell his story. It was so good. I got a 400-page sampler of this in, I can't remember when, maybe September, and loved it. I was just like, yes, this is it. This is all I want. It was so good. And then I got the physical book to finish it, and it just was so good. This blew me away. I loved it. I feel like I'm kind of in the minority in this, and I don't know why, but maybe it's because I didn't love his other books, that this is just really doing it for me. And I feel like my camera is about to, like, my clips can only be up to, I think, like 25 minutes, and then it like cuts off. So this is perfect. I loved this. I cannot wait for the sequel. Oh my God. This was amazing. I love Gabe. I loved the story. I can't wait to see what happens next. And it was my favorite book of the year, if you can believe it. All right, everyone, there we go. There are my top 10 books of 2021. 2021 was not my greatest reading year. There was just so many middle of the road books. I actually really struggled with putting together this list. I was really hoping that the Absolute Book would do it for me, where I could be like, yes, end the year with like such a great book. It did not happen. I am hoping I'm going to try to be a lot pickier with what I read going into 2022 and really focus on books that I think I will actively love. That's going to be a lot of high fantasy because I'm in the mood. It's going to be just really deciding, not letting BookTube kind of influence what I read, but deciding for myself what I think I will actually love, because 2021 was not it. I've got a lot of books that I am really excited to read this year, and I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.